Hello, YouTube. This is, an intro or rather a greeting that I've stolen from the guest who we have tonight. He does it on every Friday live sessions. But today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. We're going to talk about New Year's, and what comes with New Year's is the New Year's resolutions. And this is something that I've seen. For as long as for as many New Years that I've attended, but there's something about New Year resolution. It's a very strong concept. It's a very widely believed concept, and people enter the New Year's with all this energy. And I think there was this concept in one of the Freakonomics books that the gym subscriptions see a spike in the New Year's, the yearly subscriptions or the monthly subscription, and how that actually plays into their functional economics. So much happens. You enter into the New Year's with so much energy, but something happens towards the second or third month of it. It kind of fades away. So I don't think it's a breaking news to you that New Year's resolutions don't really work. But today we're going to try to understand why that happens. Before that, can we have the intro, please? Follow your passion might be a perfect question to ask and might have a perfect answer when interpreted right.
Let's start tracking which stocks can actually go up and go down, or which stocks have an advantage with the vaccine coming out.
Why it would have been more expensive to fake a moon landing back in those days. It's quite an interesting video to watch.
The economic activity created from the App Store alone is worth $500 billion.
So let's move on to the next question.
Man, it was too easy.
Too easy, no? Why didn't you answer?
So, before I bring our guest onto the screen, you already know who's going to be here tonight. I need you to do something that I've been asking you to do forever, and some of you still, kind of get away with it. What I need you to do is I need you to see this bell and look for another bell icon that's right here, right below your screen, on your phone screen, on your computer screen, and I need you to press it. Yeah. Did you do that? Fantastic. Cool. So today's guest, can we have him on the screen, Martin? Today's guest is none other than Ankur Warikoo. Ankur Warikoo needs no introduction, popularly known as Warikoo. Again, I mean, for those of you who don't have much of a hint about, Ankur Warikoo's journey pre-YouTube and pre-Instagram and pre-LinkedIn and pre-Twitter, Ankur has been in the startup ecosystem for over a decade, famously known as the CEO of Groupon India, and then, founder of Nearby.com. And very recently, he's become an internet sensation at the age of 40. How's it going, Ankur?
Very well, man. I like how you very subtly inserted my age. I'm glad you started with that.
I kind of thought to myself, did I? Was it a mistake? But I hope
No. People would have been, वो सफेद बाल देख के people would have figured कौन है, किसको बुलाया है. So I'm glad that you started with that.
Ankur, I remember, coming across, and I don't think your journey on social media is nascent. It's not new, because I remember stumbling upon your Facebook about 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and you were still with Nearby back then, and you used to do these sessions. You used to do this series called Wari How. Don't see that happening any recently, but I think you've been around here for a while, and you've been talking to a certain age group, and you've been addressing a certain kind of problems. And one of those problems is what I thought I'd come to you with, for my audience, of course, is the problem of New Year resolutions. Like, बना तो मैं लेता हूँ, but follow करने में problem होती है. क्यों होती है?
It's a classic trap that we all fall in, Abhinav, which is there is a goal or a target that we set for our life. उसका कोई basis नहीं होता है. We more often than not do it out of desire, ran out of calculated decision of whether we can get there or not. Very famously, for instance, 1 जनवरी को बहुत सारे लोग होते हैं जो बोलते हैं कि मैं अपना वजन घटाऊंगा, and I will lose weight, I will get fit, and they just randomly out of thin air pull out a number which is 3 महीने में 10 किलो कम. And just as most goals and targets in life, it doesn't have a basis. It's almost as random as the target that your boss throws at you, that you throw at yourself by when you will have your car or your first house or you'll get married or whatever have you. And what happens is when we hit that target, we feel elated and we feel like we've arrived and we feel like we're God's gift to mankind. And when we don't hit the target, we feel super shitty about ourselves, like we are the worst people, incapable of doing anything. When the fact is that by design, all of this was arbitrary to begin with. There was no reason why should you have gone what that target was. No logical reason why that target was whatever it is. So what happens is it's intensely hard to achieve targets. And we are so accustomed to instantaneous benefits, social media giving us that dopamine shot. We want a book, click. We want a cab, click. We want the latest movie, click. We want love, swipe right. Har ek cheez at the speed of thought is available. So it tricks us into believing that we can get to goals and targets if we worked harder, if we did a lot more. The 1st January, 2nd January, everyone shows up at the gym and they're like intense. They're running like they've never before. They're lifting like they've never before. They're slogging their ass off as if that one fine day will make magic happen. And फिर उसके बाद reality strikes. Their body is aching. It's in pain. The muscles are sore. And the next day when they get up in the morning, their body cries out loud saying, boss, aaj nahi ho payega. Let's think of tomorrow. And that's when the goal goes for a toss. So it's a classic phenomena of no basis for setting up a goal and then thinking that the way to achieve to the goal is working harder and getting there faster.
And that's untrue, is what you're saying. Working hard, in this context, working hard and getting there faster or wanting to get there faster is a flawed assumption, flawed goal setting.
It is a flawed assumption. It is a flawed
Why is
assumption
that?
towards your goal. For the simple reason that, number one, you have no measurement of what it really takes to get to that goal because you haven't got to that goal. By definition, agar us goal ko aap pahunch chuke hote, you wouldn't have set it. And number two, you have to every single day motivate yourself and gather all that energy and motivation to work towards that goal. It's almost as if har ek atom of my body has to now think and focus towards that goal और अपने आप को मैं remind करवाता रहूँगा that that's the goal, that's the goal, that's the goal. It's like putting it up on the poster and so on. So there's a big difference between being inspired towards something and gathering the motivation to work towards that. I have a belief, and this is not my belief, but I've thought about this a lot. There is a lady called Mel Robbins who is wonderful. And for the audience, if you haven't checked her out, you should. She's a phenomenal thinker. And she came up with this very famous line which said, motivation is garbage. And when I heard that for the first time, I was like, mind fucking blown, because like that is a lot of sense. Here's what she said. She basically says that motivation is garbage because that is never going to be the reason why you hit your goals or your targets. And here's how I internalized it. I thought deeply about it and I said, true AR, would I be friends with someone who would always be around when I need to do shit in life and when I want to waste my time, when I want to do all the things that actually bring me down? And suddenly when I have to do the most meaningful things in life, that friend is never to be found. So we don't somehow need motivation to sleep a little longer. We don't need motivation to eat that extra piece of pizza. We don't need motivation to drink that extra glass of wine or beer or vodka or whatever else. But suddenly, जब हमें जिंदगी में काम करना होता है, we need motivation. And motivation is nowhere to be found. It's like the worst friend ever. So would we be friends with such a person? No, in real life we wouldn't. But today, we think of motivation as our best friend. Yeah, motivation मिल जाएगा ना तो life sort out हो जाएगी. But motivation doesn't want to be around you. And that is the biggest thing, that the reason working hard and trying to get there in a shorter time doesn't work is because it relies intently on this concept of motivation. And motivation, if you think deeply about it, is never to be found when you really need it. So what you need instead is something else, which could be a great segue to your next question.
What is it?
What is that next thing? And that next thing is a habit. And here's why this works biologically. हमारा दिमाग सालों करोड़ों साल से सिर्फ एक ही और चीज पे ट्रेन हुआ है. And that training is, how can I get stuff done in life dispensing the least amount of energy? How can I get things done in life dispensing the least amount of energy? So our brain is constantly in a mode which is about मुझे energy conserve करनी है, and for that I am going to do things in a way that consume the least amount of energy. So the best way for the mind to do that is to form a habit. हम रोज सुबह उठते हैं, and it's our habit to brush our teeth. We don't even think about it. At times we are in a completely different world. कुछ और ही सोच रहे होंगे, कुछ और ही plan कर रहे होंगे, लेकिन हम अपने दांत साफ कर रहे होंगे. And that's only because it's a habit. Remember the first day you rode a bike or a scooter or a motorcycle or a car, and you were shit scared. Everything around you was happening vividly. आपको वो गाय दिख रही थी, आपको वो इंसान दिख रहे थे, आपको वो गाड़ियां दिख रही थी, आपके पैर, आपके हाथ, everything was vivid. But today when we are driving it, there are times when you are halfway through where you have to go, and that's when it strikes you, मैं जा कहाँ रहा? Oh हाँ, I am headed in this direction. It's like magic. You're speaking on the phone, you're listening to music, you're covering something, you're eating popcorn while you're driving. And that then is the power of habit. The brain says, अगर ये हमें रोज ही करना है, तो इसको habit बना देते हैं. Because if it becomes a habit, I will dispense the least amount of energy. So if you want to lose weight, there are two options. Option one, set a goal. 10 kilo in 3 mahine, 15 kilo in whatever. Or you say, I'm going to form a habit. And the habit is, I will show up at the gym every day at 7 o'clock. That's it. That's the habit. It's not a goal. It's a habit. Because just going there is not going to get you anything. But the fact that you go there, your brain will know that it's time to wake up. Your brain will know that it's time to react and get the body active. The brain will know it's time to make things happen. And over time, it will just say, you know what? That's what it is. It's a habit. So I'm not going to now rely on motivation. It will just become clockwork. And it sounds like magic to those who haven't experienced the power of habit. Huh? When I shared this, people are like, hey, bakwas kar raha hai. Aise nahi hota hai. And that's only because they haven't yet seen what the power of habit is. So I encourage you to think about what are the things that you do subconsciously in your life without even realizing that you're doing it. इतने सारे लोग होते हैं जिनकी habit होती है खाना खाते हुए मुंह खोल के खाने की हैबिट, या खाना खाने के बाद हमेशा मीठा खाने की हैबिट, या सुबह उठते ही सबसे पहले टॉयलेट जाने की हैबिट, या सुबह उठते ही कुछ और करने की हैबिट, या सोने से पहले कुछ और करने की हैबिट. These are things that you just do without even realizing that you're doing it, and that is the power of the habit. You don't need motivation to do that. It could be things that are meaningless. It could be things that you perhaps don't even want to do, but just because you've been doing it for a while, it becomes an automated machinery, and that is the power of it. So habits get you ahead in life, and habits then make you conquer goals or targets that you yourself would be surprised by you're able to achieve.
So what I'm understanding out of this, just to summarize it in my head, is it's sort of a messaging problem, because when I'm setting a goal or when I'm setting an objective to lose 10 kilos by March, and then further 10 by June, or further 10 by whatever month comes after that, it's a messaging problem. I shouldn't look at it as goals, and I should look at it as a very energy efficient habit. Habit is basically some is just going to the gym at 10 a.m. and not putting a number on the how much weights I lift.
Exactly. You put it right. You put it right.
Interesting. So that means there should be a different way to craft your New Year resolutions. And
It
these are
is.
not resolutions, these are habits.
These are
Because-
promises.
yeah.
These are promises that you make. Promise. There's a difference between a promise and a target. A promise is something that you promise to do. I promise to be honest. I promise to be truthful. I promise to be nice to people. Where does it take me in life? I don't know. I don't know. It could very well be that I'm nice to people on Twitter, and because of that, a new job opportunity will open up. I'm always honest in front of my boss, and that's why they end up trusting me more than anyone else who's perhaps even more capable than me. You don't know where your promises will take you, but yet you promise because that is the way that you inculcate the habit. So you wonderfully put it that it's a messaging thing. When you put a goal or a target, you're essentially sending a message to your brain. ये achieve करना है. अगर कर लिया तो life एकदम rock star बन जाएगी. नहीं किया तो घंटा life होगी. So you have these two options. But when you make a promise, कि I promise to go to the gym every day at X hours, your brain is like, okay, I will help you get to that promise. Where will that promise take me? 10 kgs by March, 10 kgs by June, 10 kgs never, 10 kgs in a month itself?
I don't
We'll
know.
find that out. Exactly. I don't know. We'll find that out.
Got it. So basically, I think you're also safeguarding your mental health when you're, not tying your self-esteem and self-worth to that 10 kgs goal, and and that way you're also more likely to achieve it. But एक problem है habits के साथ. Habits cultivate करने में भी तो time लगता है. We've grown up, seeing our parents pestering us to build a certain habit, cultivate a certain habit. So what's a framework to, okay, I can obviously, sort this thing for my brain and, make better worded promises to my brain and be like, okay, not putting much pressure on you, no pressure, no sweat. We're going to just wake up on time and go to the gym. No pressure thereon. You can lift 5 kgs, you can lift 50 kgs. That's your call.
Yes.
That's a messaging problem. But how do you cultivate these habits? I can talk to my brain nicely, but still cultivating habits is not that easy a job. What's the
isn't.
framework?
It isn't. And at least the framework that I've used, by the way, a great book to refer to for this entire topic is Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a terrific book, one that everyone should read in their lifetime. And I cannot recommend it more. So everything that I'm saying and everything that you will hear in this conversation is frankly just an inspiration from how clearly that guy has written about habits. And specific to the framework that you asked, which is how do you really go about building good habits? At least the one that I've used is, or realize that works, is you end up building habits because of 3 reasons. One, you have no choice. You have no choice. So you will force yourself to build that habit. It is surprisingly the biggest reason why we build our habits. We were not given choices when we were kids. If we were given choices, most of us would not be brushing our teeth. If we were given choices, most of us would not be washing our hands. If we were given choices, most of us would be lying through our nose. If we were given our choices, we would perhaps not even take a shower every day of winters. We were forced to, and that's why that became a habit. And that is ironic, but it is the way it is that most habits, at least in the Indian cultural context, get built because of force. So that's option one. I wouldn't recommend that, but it is what it is, at least at the beneficiary level.
Thank you.
Number two is you essentially realize that there is no way that you can even plan where is it that you want to go. So what you do is you realize that you are married to the journey. It is something that comes naturally to you. So you don't have to really work hard towards building that habit, because guess what? You actually enjoy building that habit. Let's say you enjoy writing and you're like, you know what? It's not a bad idea for me to build a habit of writing a page every day. And you know what? It could result in a book in a year. It could result in a book in 2 years. It could result in a book every 6 months. I don't know, but I genuinely enjoy that habit. Now, as is evident, these are very rare cases, because typically you would want to build habits in areas where you struggle And that's why people think of habits as कोई ऐसी चीज जो हमें करनी पड़ेगी as against कोई ऐसी चीज जो हम करना चाहते हैं. But if there is any habit जो तुम genuinely करना चाहते हो, do not ever make the mistake of setting a goal or a target to it. Enjoy the journey. Set that habit. It will lead to wonderful results. The best example that I can speak of is my entire content creation game. And I say this as a living example of someone who's committed to a habit, but it never ever was a drain on me or my energy. It gives me sheer joy to be sharing my wisdom, my experience, my knowledge, my mistakes, my fuck ups, my failures with whosoever is willing to give attention to it. And it didn't genuinely seem like work ever. So it was the best habit to build because I was doing something that came naturally to me, and yet I could see the impact of that habit compounding over several years. That's the second piece. But the third one, and that's where most of us struggle, is you want to build a habit in an area that you actually struggle with. It's not natural to you. You want to lose weight, you want to get fit, but it's just insanely hard for you to show up at the gym every day. So how do you build that habit? And the framework that's worked for me, or the approach that's worked for me in this case, is that I will do 2 or 3 things. Number one, the best way to stick to a habit is when you recognize that you're making progress. The worst way to stick to a habit is if you go blind into whether you're making progress or not. So a very essential mechanism for you to get you to stick to a habit is to track progress. Track progress. When it comes to fitness, as simple as crazy as it sounds, you literally take your body measurements every week. You do that every week. Your chest, your thighs, your abs, your hips, whatever else that you care about. And you measure that. Because when you measure it, only then you get a semblance of whether you're making progress or not. When you send or write something every day, how do you know you're making progress? You basically make progress because you begin to either use tools that give you a sense of, hey, here is how your grammar is improving. Here is how you're using lesser of filler words. Maybe you want to get great at public speaking and you wanted to have a goal of doing a TEDx once, but guess what? The best habit is you speak into the camera or in front of the mirror or just to yourself every day. How do you measure whether you're making progress or not? You use software for it. You use enough and more tools that are available, which help you identify, are you using, yeah, which are filler words, because that is not the right diction. Are you using the right grammar? Are you structuring your words? So on and so forth. There's enough and more help available. But the key thing is you are able to track progress. That's number one. Number two is when you do progress, which hopefully will come through if you commit yourself to a habit, there is a reward that you psychologically give yourself. It's the best way to incentivize people to keep moving on. It's proven beyond doubt scientifically, and it works for ourselves as well. Unlike tickle, where we can't tickle ourselves and feel ticklish, we can actually give ourselves an incentive, a bonus, and we will feel great about ourselves. It's magical. For instance, you'd say, you know what? If I go to the gym for 7 consecutive days and I do my body measurement, even if there is no change, I am going to treat myself to a cookie. I am going to treat myself to a slice of pizza. I am going to treat myself to 15 minutes of binge watching. Well, 15 minutes of binge watching, but whatever, you know that. You basically treat yourself to something that you know will make you feel happy, will make you feel acknowledged, will make you feel rewarded. So that's the second piece. And the third and the final one is that you are constantly, at least this works for me wonderfully, you're constantly documenting how you're feeling. You're documenting how you're feeling. Because here's the thing about our emotions. They seem like the biggest shit that we are going through when we are going through them. But we so quickly forget what we were feeling. So when you're lifting that weight, or when you've just come back from the gym and your body is sore, it's hurting, you almost promise yourself that you don't want to go ever again. At that point of time, you document your feeling. It could be a voice recording, it could be something that you're writing, it could be a video that you shoot, whatever is comfortable for you. and you record what you're feeling. And the next day, when you were able to replicate that habit, and then the next day when you're able to replicate that habit, and the next day when you're able to replicate your habit, you randomly go about digging into the feelings that you were feeling in the past. And that then tells you, oh my God, I was in such pain the Monday of last week, and I have no recollection of that happening now. It's almost as if that day didn't exist. So guess what it tells me? It tells me that whatever else that I was feeling that day, however shitty I was feeling about that habit, I don't feel that anymore. I've forgotten what that feeling was. So whatever is it that I'm feeling today, this too shall be over. And it's unbelievably powerful when you realize that that is what's happening to you. So these three things: track progress, reward yourself, and document how you're feeling. These three, particularly for me, just work and almost always work. But it's only in the event when you're setting up a habit that you struggle with.
Got it. Okay. So I think, I just want to summarize the entire point that you mentioned, and I want to zoom into the third part, because the first part you spoke about is build a habit via force, which is what our parents have always tried to do, and sometimes you end up resenting them. Not a great idea. Not a great idea for a boss-employee relationship either. Don't force yourself, or don't set a mechanism that forces you. Second is not a solution that we're looking for in this problem. We're obviously, looking to get away from our struggles. That is where the third mechanism comes in. And here, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you're essentially trying to preach that, again, never get into the mistake of setting targets. It's not a destination. Again, we're destination versus journey wala aa jata hai. That's, in fact, this is a journey of habits, and wherein progress tracking is necessary. And in fact, make a habit out of tracking progress, even if you see, no progress.
Yes.
And reward yourself to track progress as well. That
Yes.
even if I'm, not an inch lesser, or not an ounce lighter, I'll reward myself, so that progress tracking also becomes a habit. Got it. But Ankur, tell me one thing. Now, so far, what we've discussed is a very personalized scale, that, okay, this technique sort of applies to, when you want to lose weight, or when you want to study harder, or when you want to wake up on time. What is the scale of this approach? Can you apply it to teams? Can you apply it to work? Can you apply it to your career? And not just the personal battle of it, that, okay, I want to become a graphic designer, so I'm going to learn how to, design better. But what is the scale of this framework? You've led teams.
Yeah. So, and that's a terrific question here, because more often than not, people say, you know what, it works for an individual. It works great for my personal ambitions, even to some extent my professional goals, but does it begin to work for teams? Does it work for organizations? And here, I'd argue that it does, but the necessary input to that is that people themselves are also habit-led. You can't build a habit-led organization comprising team members who are goal-led or target-led. It's not going to happen. It's a building block. It's a building pyramid, and it has to have that foundation of people who think the same way that you're building that foundation upon. So that's the first prerequisite. And that is hard because it's intensely hard to identify people who are habit-led rather than goal-led. A large part of the hiring process that we had at Nearby, still do, was centered around that, where we spent an inordinate amount of time not looking at the resume of the individual, because that's the goal or the target that they have achieved. It's this complete chest thumping exercise of, here's what I've done, and here's cool I am, and here's important I have. But we instead started with, tell us about the inputs. Tell us about what defines you. Tell us about what are the worst things about you. What are the things that you've learned from your parents that you wish to share with your kids, should you have them? Which of the 5 senses would you be comfortable living without? Why is that? Is speed more important or perfection? Is money more important or power? Like questions like these, which completely threw the candidates off guard, but gave us a great way to digging into whether they are goal-led or habit-led. So that's the first step. It's nearly not easy. We struggled with just as much as anyone else who's attempting to do it. and I don't think we've nearly touched the depths of it as much as we would have liked to. But I think we've made some progress. The second piece is then, should you have a team which is largely or dominated by habit-led people, you then begin to inculcate the exact same things that you have in the individual at a team level as well. What do I mean by that? Amazon, for instance, is a great living example of a habit-led organization. Irrespective of who you speak, right from Jeff Bezos to perhaps the one who's on the shop floor or the warehouse packing the products, virtually no one that I have personally encountered or had conversations with is ever speaking about the output. They're not speaking about the GMV. They're not speaking about the revenue. They're not speaking about the profit. They're only and only measuring the inputs. Now, there may be an external side which is speaking about it. So you may have someone sitting in saying, oh, we did this much in Great India sale or some shit like that. But internally within the company, it's orchestrated to only and only talk about input variables. How many new products did we add? How many people did we have visiting the app and the website? How many checkouts did we have? What was the bounce rate like? What were the customer contacts per orders that were done? What was the average revenue per order? What was the average basket size? Input. Because what they know, and this is, I don't know if you've seen that video, but it's a fantastic reflection of how Amazon works. There was a conference and Jeff Bezos is being interviewed or just questioned, and there's a press reporter who's like, hey, Jeff, or whatever, what do you think is your prediction for the next quarter financial performance of Amazon? And Jeff almost smirks at that guy. I was like, dude, like I could see it in his head being like, you fucktard.
Okay.
I am 2 years ahead where I know what's going to be the quarterly financial performance. This is what he said. At Amazon, we know what is going to be the financial performance of the quarter 8 quarters from where we are. So the quarter next has already been decided 2 years back. And it's done, it's dusted, it's just written. We are 2 years ahead where every input metric of ours is so granularly obsessed over that we literally have a definitive outcome guaranteed to some ballpark. So that is what you have to build in a team, which is, can you get now the entire team? And this is insanely hard. I admit we haven't been able to do it for a lot of functions except for a few. Can you get down and define what are the inputs that make that functional team get to its output? What are the habits that they need to go in to make their output comes through? An example, sales. What is their target and outcome? Monthly revenue, monthly sales. But what are the input variables? For a place like Nearby, the input variables were very clear. It's a habit that you have to meet, not close, meet 7 new merchants a week. It's a habit that you have to connect with 10 old merchants in a week. It's a habit that you have to get your margins in a certain ballpark and not deviate significantly from there, whatever that margin is. And these were just input variables that we get and fed in, and that then hopefully mushroomed to a habit-led or a habit-first organization. I saw that up close for some functions. I'll admit it doesn't necessarily, I wouldn't say work, because I would lay the blame on ourselves for not having figured it out. I'm certain it works. We just don't know how. But I didn't see that, at least at our end, happening for some functions, particularly in technology. But there were some functions that worked miraculously well through a habit-led approach.
Okay, so Ankur, broadly, this was a beautiful detour that we took, because this brought me, or rather, this threw multiple questions at me that I can use to pull you back into the original conversation. Here you spoke about obviously inputs versus outputs, which is like a synonymous form of habits versus resolutions, which is synonymous with systems versus goals. And, the world's been talking about it. You guys can Google, to know more about these things, inputs versus outputs. Something, Ankur, that we missed out when we were addressing the personal part of goal setting or, habit setting is we sort of mentioned that, or you sort of mentioned that do not make the mistake of setting targets. But you cannot, run that way in organizations. So in organizations, you set targets. And I don't think, this is my personal belief, I don't think humans should completely do away with setting targets. You sort of mentioned that, okay, when they do set targets, when the sales team does show projections, they kind of walk backwards and set the systems in place. Can you, make it clearer, because that was a professional side of things. Can you probably draw an analogy how we can do something similar? Because if you just don't want to do away with, that I want to be fitter, I want to, perhaps lose not exactly 22 kgs, but, at least 15 to 30 kgs. So how do we walk backwards from them? How do I walk backwards from my targets and ideal figure and ideal image and set habits? What's the process there?
So the process is not dramatically different from what you would do in an organization as well. And I think you summarized it really well, Abhinav, where you have some sort of a magic formula, and the magic formula comprises what is it that the company wishes to achieve, because everyone has to get to some point, and you can't be absolved of not having or absolved from having goals and targets. But then they break it down into what gets them there. And that is where the habit first organization mindset comes in. Now, if you were to pick up that approach and apply it to your personal life, here's a great way of doing it. A great way of doing it is, I am not going to set a target of writing a book this year. Setting a goal of writing a book this year. Instead, I'm going to set a habit of writing every day. And I'm going to do this for about 2 weeks or maybe a month. And after a month, I'll figure it out. How much do I end up writing on an average? How many words? How many pages? And just digest that. When I'm able to digest that, and I know what is usually the length of a book, which could be anywhere between 40,000 to 80,000 words, I have a sense of how far am I, if I were to maintain this habit, from writing a book. And that becomes a semblance of a magic formula. It's the same thing that could happen for weight loss as well. I want to lose 20 kgs. And if I go back and do my research, I'll realize that for me to lose 20 kgs, I have to be burning X calories, which is the deficit that I need to show from the intake of the food that I have and whatever I burn through the daily exercise. Now, if I have a smartwatch, or even if I don't, I'm just able to see whatever is it that I burn while I'm at the gym. And I do that for a month or 2 weeks. I get a ballpark sense of how much calorie am I dispensing when I'm at that gym for an hour. And I also have a ballpark of how many calories am I intaking when I have my food. And that difference will tell me how many calories do I end up burning in a day. So that may some way give me the semblance of a magic formula again of how long will it take me to lose those 10 kgs. This is the base of it. Now, what begins to happen is that this is a linear projection, and humans are beautifully adapted to think linearly. But they had no idea of compounding. दिखता ही नहीं है, हमें वो एहसास ही नहीं होता है. So what begins to happen is that if you do write every day, and you thought that you end up writing, 500 words a day, very soon in 2 months, 3 months, if you're doing it every day, you'll be writing 600 words a day. And very soon you'll be writing 700. And very soon you'll be writing 850. And it's a log scale and keeps going on and on and on. And the same way, you were burning X calories, now you're burning X plus 10%, then X plus 20, then X plus 25, whatever it is. And that then gives us the sense of how easy it was to actually get to the targets or the goals that we had set out originally as well. So it starts with, again, that measurement of the input variable, benchmark that against whatever goal or target that you aspire to, but think of it, and instantly when you think of it and you do the calculation, get rid of it from your mind. And then just devote yourself to the habit. And you devote yourself to the habit, compounding begins to take over, and sooner than later, you realize that you're getting to that goal or target faster than you imagined.
Super interesting. And I want to close the discussion. This was obviously very fruitful. We started with resolutions, got to how corporates should or corporate goers should workers should approach their goal setting, and how you should approach your goal setting and walk back from it to get to the magic formula. There's something very beautiful you said in the middle of it, and I want to bring you back to it, and that can be a beautiful closing thought. The importance of journaling throughout all of this. And journaling is not for performance tracking. You're not logging your weight. You're just legit writing or recording or documenting how you're feeling. How does that, can you break the mechanics of that, and perhaps iterate for the audience that this also applies to your work? Work can get more stressful than, losing weight sometimes. Uncle.
It is, yeah. So here's one thing that we as humans and an entire generation is getting away from, which I am worried about. And that is, we have stopped writing in real life. We're typing, and we're typing perpetually, but that is not equivalent to writing. When our hand is in motion on a piece of paper, our brain is intensely being told that whatever is it that we are writing is important, which is why our mom and dad were not lying and were definitely not inaccurate when they said, अगर कुछ याद करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो तो उसको लिख के याद करो, because that is actually a proven scientific way of memorizing or telling your brain that this is important. We've stopped writing. And because we've stopped writing, there is a disconnect that has been formed between what the brain experiences and what it is being told is important. So now the brain is completely confused. It's like, I am fucked because I have no way of distilling all the noise that you keep dumping on me. I have no idea of what's important. I have no idea of what I should retain. I have no idea of what I should pay attention to. So I am just working round the clock in a way that I've never worked before. That's the reason for stress. That's the reason for anxiety. That's the reason for the perpetual high beating rates of so many youngsters when they should ideally have a resting heartbeat of between 50 to 55, and most youngsters now have a resting heartbeat of upwards of 70. Duck, 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 duck. It's all like they're gaming perpetually. So writing helps. It helps because it's a beautiful way to tell the brain whatever I'm writing is important. Now, when you journal, you're essentially documenting what you're feeling. It doesn't need to be a diary. It doesn't definitely need to be private as well. It could very well be public, but if it is private, it's best because then you're not writing thinking that someone will be reading it. You're writing purely for your own sake. And you're writing whatever is it that you're feeling. When you do that, your brain gets to know that this is important. But your brain, remember the first thing, it also is structured to get an activity done, dispensing the least amount of energy. So if you begin to feel the same emotions over time, your brain begins to know, ye to chalta hi rehta hai, and it begins to dispense the least amount of energy when you feel that emotion. So the next time you feel that emotion, you actually react slightly lesser than you did previously. And the next time you feel that emotion, you act slightly lesser than you did the last time. It could be anger, it could be jealousy, it could be envy, it could be hunger, it could be anything, any emotion. If you are documenting it, I am so fucking jealous of the entire Avalon team because they seem to be having a ball of a time doing what they're doing. And I wish I was them. I am so jealous of everything that those cool dudes do, and I wish I was them. I am so jealous that they earn so much money and they're riding and driving great, cool stuff at such a young age. I am so jealous. So brain ko laga, oh my fuck, ये तो jealousy हर रोज आ रहा है, हर रोज ही आ रहा है, हर रोज ही आ रहा है. So then it's like, okay, अगर jealousy हर रोज आनी ही है, so then the next time it comes, I'm not going to spend as much energy in trying to provocate someone and make them feel jealous. I will be just slightly lesser. And it works. It works. So what happens is twofold. One, you feel lesser when the next time you feel that emotion or that emotion is generated. More importantly, if you reflect upon your past journals, everything that you've written, to the same thing that I mentioned some time back, you realize how much you felt that day because of the gravity of what you wrote, and you have no recollection of it. Like you have no recollection how hard that day was. And there's so many days like that, right? जिस दिन हमारे साथ कुछ हो रहा होता है हमें लगता है कि पूरी जिंदगी बर्बाद हो गई. Everything is gone. लेकिन 1 महीने बाद, 3 महीने बाद, 1 साल बाद, everything becomes normal. Time heals shit. It does. It's true. So this is a great way for us to remind ourselves कि जो कुछ भी हम उस दिन पे महसूस कर रहे थे, जो कुछ भी हमारे साथ उस दिन हो रहा था, it is transient. It is temporary. It's going to go away. And that means that whatever it is that you're feeling today, if you're feeling the shittiest that you've ever felt today, take it from the journal. This is not the shittiest that you've ever felt. Because 3 months back, when that dude or that girl broke up with you, you felt that that was the shittiest day of your life. This is not the shittiest day of your life. But if you feel that way, guess what? In 3 months from now, you will not even remember shit from it. And that's why journaling.
Beautiful. So it's like an emotion tracker, and the more you track your emotions, you'll find your mind's playing tricks on you, and eventually you'll come to terms with it. You'll be like, bro, weight lift किया है तो pain तो होगा, ये तो fundamental है, bro. It's okay,
Exactly.
happens.
Exactly.
Awesome. Lovely picking your brains, Ankur. This was fantastic. This was amazing. This was,
I loved it, man.
I think, the best session of the Wednesday podcast so far. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Ankur.
so much for having me. Thank you for your thoughtful questions and all the best, man.